Sometimes the biggest songs in the world are built on misunderstandings. A catchy chorus, a great melody, a memorable beat, and before long, millions of people are singing along, without realizing what the song is actually about. Throughout music history, some tracks became massive radio hits because listeners completely missed the darker, deeper, or more emotional meaning hidden beneath the surface. Some were political warnings mistaken for party songs. Others were heartbreaking confessions disguised as feel-good anthems. But once you understand the real meaning behind them, you never hear them the same way again. Tonight, we're looking back at 10 famous songs that became huge hits because people misunderstood what they were really trying to say. And at number 10, one of the most upbeat anti-war songs ever recorded. Number 10, 99 Luftballons, Nena, 1983.
The money we've got, set them free at the break.
At first glance, 99 Luftballons sounded fun. Bright synthesizers, energetic vocals, a catchy melody that felt perfectly designed for the early 1980s. Even listeners who didn't understand German still found themselves singing along to the chorus. The song became an international sensation, crossing language barriers and dominating radio stations around the world. To many people, it simply felt playful, almost carefree.
Opens up one eager eye, focusing it on.
But hidden beneath that infectious pop sound was one of the darkest messages of the Cold War era. 99 Luftballons was actually a political anti-war song about paranoia, military escalation, and how small misunderstandings can spiral into global catastrophe. The inspiration reportedly came after songwriter Carlo Kargas watched balloons floating into the sky during a concert in West Berlin. He imagined what might happen if military forces mistakenly interpreted harmless balloons as a threat. That frightening idea became the heart of the song. In the lyrics, a cluster of balloons drifts across the sky and triggers panic from military authorities. Fighter jets are launched, nations overreact, political tensions explode, and eventually, the misunderstanding escalates into full-scale destruction. It was a chilling reflection of the nuclear anxiety hanging over the world in the early 1980s. At the height of the Cold War, people lived with the very real fear that a simple mistake, technical error, or moment of paranoia could potentially trigger nuclear war between global superpowers. And yet, despite that terrifying subject matter, the song became a joyful pop phenomenon. Perhaps because the melody felt so uplifting, or because many listeners outside Germany never fully understood the lyrics. But maybe that contrast is exactly what made the song so powerful.
99 red balloons go by.
Because beneath the colorful synth-pop surface was a warning about how fragile peace truly is, and how easily humanity can destroy itself through fear, misunderstanding, and overreaction. Even today, 99 Luftballons remains one of the most fascinating examples of a song becoming famous for almost the opposite feeling of what it actually meant. Number 9. Melt With You, Modern English, 1982.
Using all my breath.
Few songs from the early 1980s sound as joyful and romantic as I Melt With You. With its shimmering guitars, upbeat rhythm, and dreamy atmosphere, the track became one of the defining love songs of the MTV generation. It played at dances, parties, road trips, and countless nostalgic movie scenes, creating the feeling of youthful romance and emotional freedom.
Making love to you was never sex.
To most listeners, it sounded simple. Two people deeply in love, wanting to lose themselves in each other forever. But beneath that warm, euphoric surface was something much darker. I Melt With You was actually written against the backdrop of Cold War nuclear anxiety, the same fear that haunted much of the early 1980s. Songwriter Robbie Gray later explained that the lyrics were inspired by the idea of two lovers staying together while the world collapses around them during a nuclear apocalypse. Suddenly, lines that once sounded romantic take on an entirely different meaning. The melting in the song was never just emotional, it was literal.
dream of better lives, the kind which never.
The song imagines intimacy and human connection existing in the final moments before total destruction. And that strange contrast became the reason the track endured. Because instead of focusing on panic or violence, the song chooses tenderness in the face of catastrophe. It suggests that even when the world feels unstable or doomed, people still search for love, comfort, and closeness.
I made a pilgrimage to save this human.
Perhaps that's why so many listeners completely miss the real meaning for years. The melody feels uplifting, the production feels warm, the chorus feels euphoric. Nothing about the song immediately sounds frightening. But underneath the shimmering new wave sound was a haunting reflection of an entire generation living beneath the shadow of possible nuclear war. And maybe that hidden tension is exactly what gives I Melt With You its emotional power even today. Because beneath the romance was a quiet truth many people understood during the Cold War. When the future feels uncertain, human connection becomes even more precious. Number 8. Dancing Queen, ABBA, 1976. To millions of people around the world, Dancing Queen feels pure happiness. The piano glides in, the beat begins to rise, and suddenly, the song creates an atmosphere of celebration, freedom, and youthful joy, unlike almost anything else from the 1970s. For decades, it has been played at weddings, parties, reunions, and dance floors everywhere. It sounds glamorous, uplifting, and completely carefree. But underneath all that sparkle was something surprisingly bittersweet. At its heart, Dancing Queen is not really about endless youth. It's about how quickly youth disappears. The song captures a single fleeting moment in a young woman's life, a brief period where she feels beautiful, alive, admired, and completely free. The lyrics never promise that this feeling will last forever. In fact, they quietly suggest the opposite. There's a subtle melancholy hidden beneath the joy, as if the song already understands that these moments are temporary memories waiting to happen. That emotional contrast became one of ABBA's greatest strengths. Behind the shimmering disco production and irresistible melodies, many of their songs carried themes of loneliness, nostalgia, heartbreak, and the passage of time. And Dancing Queen may be the perfect example of that hidden emotional depth. The young girl in the song is described almost like a snapshot frozen in time, laughing, dancing, completely alive in the moment. But listeners instinctively understand something she doesn't yet realize. One day, she'll look back on this night from much farther away. Perhaps that's why the song resonates so deeply across generations. Because people aren't only hearing a dance song, they're hearing memory itself. The memory of being young enough to believe the night would never end. And maybe that's the real meaning hidden inside Dancing Queen. Not simply the joy of youth, but the quiet sadness that youth can never stay. Number 7. Imagine, John Lennon, 1971. Few songs in history have sounded more peaceful than Imagine. Soft piano, gentle vocals, a calm, almost dreamlike atmosphere. For generations of listeners, the song became an anthem of hope, unity, and human idealism. It's often played during moments of global tragedy, memorial events, and calls for peace, creating the impression that it's one of the most uplifting songs ever written. But many people miss the true meaning hiding beneath its beautiful melody. Because Imagine was never meant to be comforting in the traditional sense. It was meant to challenge people. John Lennon wasn't simply writing a pleasant ballad about harmony. He was asking listeners to question the foundations of the modern world itself: religion, nationalism, materialism, borders, and the systems that divide human beings from one another. And in the early 1970s, those ideas were deeply controversial. The song invites listeners to imagine a world with no countries, no possessions, and even no organized religion. For some people, that sounded inspiring. For others, almost unsettling. Yet because the melody felt so warm and emotionally sincere, millions of listeners embraced the song without fully focusing on how radical its message actually was. That contrast became the key to its success. The music feels gentle, while the ideas underneath it quietly dismantle much of human civilization as people know it. And perhaps that's why Imagine remains so fascinating decades later. It functions almost like a musical paradox. A soft, beautiful song carrying one of the boldest philosophical statements ever placed inside mainstream pop music.
Imagine there's no heaven.
Even now, listeners continue debating whether the song is hopeful, naive, spiritual, political, or impossible. But maybe its lasting power comes from something simpler. Imagine gave people permission, even briefly, to picture a world different from the one they were living in. And sometimes the most powerful songs aren't the ones that provide answers, but the ones that make people question everything they once accepted as normal. Number 6. Every Day I Write the Book. Elvis Costello, 1983.
You don't know what love is.
At first listen, Every Day I Write the Book sounds light, clever, and romantic. With its smooth melody, catchy chorus, and polished pop production, the song became one of Elvis Costello's most accessible hits of the early 1980s. It felt upbeat, sophisticated, and charming, the kind of song people casually played on car radios without thinking too deeply about it. Most listeners assumed it was simply another love song. But the real meaning hiding underneath was far more complicated. The title itself is actually a metaphor. Costello wasn't writing about romance in a dreamy or sentimental way. Instead, he was describing the exhausting emotional process of trying to understand a difficult relationship. Almost as if every argument, misunderstanding, and emotional reaction was becoming another chapter in an endless book. The phrase, "Every day I write the book," suggests someone constantly trying to make sense of love while simultaneously being hurt by it. And beneath the bright melody was a surprising amount of emotional frustration. The relationship in the song feels unstable, confusing, emotionally repetitive. The narrator keeps analyzing behavior, searching for meaning, and trying to decode emotional signals that never fully become clear. In many ways, the song is less about romance itself, and more about emotional exhaustion disguised as clever pop songwriting.
Every day, every day, every day.
But because the music sounds so smooth and upbeat, many listeners completely missed that tension. That contrast became one of the song's greatest strengths. The melody feels optimistic. The lyrics feel emotionally trapped. And perhaps that emotional contradiction is why the song still resonates decades later. Because many people understand the experience hiding underneath it, trying to turn emotional chaos into something meaningful. Even today, Every Day I Write the Book remains a perfect example of how a catchy pop song can quietly hide heartbreak, frustration, and emotional complexity beneath an irresistibly polished surface. Number 5. American Woman, The Guess Who, 1970.
For you, these arms.
When American Woman exploded onto radio stations in 1970, it sounded rebellious, loud, and undeniably cool. The heavy guitar riff, the swaggering vocals, the raw energy. Everything about the song felt like a classic rock anthem built for the turbulent atmosphere of the early 70s. And for many listeners, that's all it ever seemed to be. A catchy song about women and attraction. But beneath the aggressive sound was a much deeper message that many people completely overlooked.
I will never be free, no, my baby, no, no.
American Woman was actually rooted in social and political tension during the Vietnam War era. The Guess Who, a Canadian band, wrote the song partly as a reaction against what they saw as the darker side of American culture at the time: war, consumerism, violence, and cultural excess. The American Woman in the lyrics was never meant to represent a single person. She symbolized an entire cultural identity, a seductive but dangerous force pulling people toward materialism, chaos, and emotional emptiness. That interpretation gave the song a much sharper edge than many listeners realized. Beneath the swagger and blues rock attitude was an uneasy critique of a society that seemed increasingly obsessed with power, image, and destruction. And yet, because the groove felt so irresistible, millions of listeners simply embraced it as another rebellious rock hit without fully absorbing the meaning underneath. Perhaps that irony is exactly what made the song so successful. The music feels exciting. The lyrics feel confrontational. And together, they captured the emotional confusion of an era when America itself seemed caught between freedom and collapse. Even decades later, American Woman still carries that same tension. It sounds fun on the surface, but underneath is a warning about seduction, identity, and the hidden cost of chasing the American dream without questioning where it leads. Number 4. Fortunate Son, Creedence Clearwater Revival, 1969. Few songs in rock history sound as explosive and rebellious as Fortunate Son. From the moment the guitar kicks in, the song feels angry, urgent, almost confrontational. Released in 1969 at the height of the Vietnam War, it quickly became one of the defining protest songs of its generation. But over the decades, many listeners misunderstood what the song was actually protesting. Some assumed it was simply anti-American. Others thought it attacked soldiers returning from war. But the real target was something far more specific: class inequality. John Fogerty wrote Fortunate Son as a furious response to the growing frustration many working-class Americans felt during the Vietnam era. While ordinary young men were being drafted into war, wealthy and politically connected families often found ways to avoid military service entirely. The fortunate sons in the song were the privileged elite, people born into power, wealth, and influence who could escape the consequences faced by everyone else. That anger pulses through every line of the track. This wasn't a protest against ordinary Americans. It was a protest against hypocrisy, against a system where sacrifice was demanded most heavily from those with the least power. And yet, because the song's energy feels so exciting and patriotic on the surface, many listeners completely miss the meaning underneath. Over the years, it has even been used in movies, commercials, and political events in ways that directly contradict the song's original message. That contradiction became part of the song's strange legacy. People heard the guitars, the adrenaline, the rebellious spirit, but not always the warning hidden beneath it. And perhaps that's why Fortunate Son still feels powerful today. Because beyond its Vietnam-era context, the song taps into something timeless: the frustration people feel when systems of power seem unfairly tilted toward the privileged. Even decades later, the song still sounds less like a history lesson and more like unresolved anger echoing across generations. Number 3. Summer of '69, Bryan Adams, 1985. At first listen, Summer of '69 sounds like pure nostalgia. The song feels filled with youthful energy, garage bands, summer romance, old guitars, and memories of growing up during a simpler time. For decades, listeners embraced it as a heartfelt look back at teenage life in the late 1960s. A classic anthem about friendship, freedom, and the feeling that youth might somehow last forever. And because the song feels so emotionally sincere, most people never questioned that interpretation. But the real meaning hiding underneath the title was something far more provocative. Bryan Adams later revealed that Summer of '69 was not literally about the year 1969 at all. Instead, the phrase was intended as a double meaning, a playful adult reference disguised inside a nostalgic rock anthem. Suddenly, lines that once sounded innocent took on a completely different tone. The song wasn't really about a historical summer. It was about passion, desire, youthful intensity, and the unforgettable emotional rush of being young and alive. That hidden layer became one of the reasons the song connected so strongly with audiences. On the surface, it feels universal enough for everyone, a memory of youth slipping away too quickly. But underneath was a more personal, sensual energy that listeners absorbed emotionally without always consciously recognizing it. And perhaps that's why the song became so timeless. Because even people who never understood the hidden joke still connected deeply with the feeling at the center of it. The bittersweet realization that some moments in life feel so powerful. They remain frozen in memory forever. The guitars, the friendships, the romance, the illusion that life would always feel that alive. Even decades later, Summer of '69 still resonates not because listeners care about the actual year, but because the song captures something universal. The aching nostalgia for the version of ourselves that once believed the best days would never end. Number 2. Every Breath You Take. The Police, 1983.
Every breath you take.
Few songs in the 1980s sounded more romantic than Every Breath You Take. The melody is soft, the vocals feel intimate, and the atmosphere seems perfect for slow dances, weddings, and love playlists. For years, millions of people embraced the song as a tender ballad about devotion and eternal love. It became one of the most famous romantic songs of its generation, played everywhere from high school dances to wedding receptions. But underneath that beautiful surface was something deeply unsettling. Because the song was never really about love, it was about obsession.
Every bond you break, every step you...
Sting later explained that Every Breath You Take was written during a painful period of emotional turmoil and separation. Rather than describing healthy romance, the lyrics portray someone unable to let go, a person constantly watching, monitoring, and emotionally fixating on an ex-partner. Once listeners recognize that perspective, the lyrics suddenly feel disturbing. Every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you.
You belong to me.
What once sounded comforting begins to sound controlling, possessive, almost threatening. The narrator isn't expressing affection. He's describing surveillance. And perhaps the most fascinating part is how many people completely missed the meaning for decades. The melody feels so calm and beautiful that listeners naturally interpreted the song as romantic, even while singing along to lyrics that describe emotional obsession with alarming intensity. That contrast became the key to the song's legacy. The music creates warmth, the lyrics create unease, and together they form one of the most brilliantly deceptive pop songs ever recorded. Even today, Every Breath You Take still appears on romantic playlists despite its true meaning being almost the exact opposite of a love song. But maybe that contradiction is what makes the track unforgettable. Because beneath its smooth surface was a chilling reminder that obsession can sometimes disguise itself as love, especially when wrapped inside a beautiful melody. Number 1. Born in the U.S.A. Bruce Springsteen, 1984.
Hands up like a dog has been beat to.
Few songs in American history have been misunderstood more completely than Born in the U.S.A. At first listen, it sounds overwhelmingly patriotic. The massive drums, the arena rock energy, the repeated chorus shouted like a national rallying cry. For many listeners in the 1980s, the song felt like pure American pride, the kind of anthem played at political events, sports stadiums, and fireworks celebrations. Over the years, it became closely associated with nationalism and traditional patriotism, often used by people who never looked closely at the lyrics themselves. But the real meaning hiding underneath was far darker. Bruce Springsteen was not celebrating the American system. He was criticizing it. Specifically, the song tells the story of a working-class Vietnam veteran returning home after war, only to discover that his country has abandoned him completely. The narrator is trapped, economically broken, emotionally scarred, and unable to find purpose in the country he once believed he was serving. Lines about being sent to kill the yellow man and returning to unemployment, isolation, and despair reveal the true emotional core of the song. Anger toward a government that demanded sacrifice from young Americans, then failed to care for them afterward. And perhaps that's what made the misunderstanding so extraordinary. The chorus sounds triumphant, but the verses are filled with pain.
I had a brother that can't stop.
Most listeners heard the shouting patriotism, while missing the bitterness and heartbreak underneath it. That contrast became one of the defining ironies of 1980s music history. A protest song became mistaken for a patriotic anthem. And maybe that confusion happened because Springsteen understood something powerful about America itself. Love for a country and disappointment in it can exist at the same time.
In the U.S.A.
Even today, Born in the U.S.A. still resonates because it captures a complicated emotional truth many nations struggle with. The difference between loving the idea of a country and confronting the reality of how it treats its own people. Some songs become hits because people understand them. Others become hits because people completely miss the point. And perhaps that's what makes music so fascinating. A melody can feel joyful while hiding heartbreak. A romantic ballad can secretly be disturbing. A patriotic anthem can actually be a protest song. But once the real meaning becomes clear, those songs change forever. Suddenly, lyrics that once sounded simple reveal entirely different emotions underneath. Pain, fear, loneliness, political anger, or spiritual searching. And maybe that's why these songs have survived for decades. Because great music often works on two levels at once. The version we hear casually, and the deeper truth waiting quietly beneath the surface. So now we'd love to hear from you. Which song on this list shocked you the most once you discovered its real meaning?